All right, ladies and gents, it's a fresh week here. Bitcoin is still sitting at $118,000, and the S&P 500 has actually gapped a little bit higher, so it's continuing that run up to, brand new all-time high blue sky breakout territories, which is fantastic. I think it's one of the key reasons that we've seen so many gains in crypto right now. If we take a look at total 3, which is going to be Bitcoin and Ethereum excluded from the markets, but everything else included here, and we take a look at what this is looking like here, we have seen a pretty decent run up here that has continued to move forward. I was going to say accelerate, but I don't know if it's actually been accelerating here. And that also is being reflected in Bitcoin's dominance. This is now the biggest Bitcoin dominance drop that we've seen in quite some time, possibly throughout this entire market cycle. I'm pretty sure it is the biggest one so far. Let's actually take a look. So that's 11% right there. And okay, we're only at 8.5. So we have seen a bigger alt season of sorts. And that was obviously going to be immediately after Trump won the election. That ended up happening, and so this was kind of November of 2024 here, which was obviously a really interesting time. So what does that mean for the markets? Well, Ethereum against Bitcoin has continued to move up. It's got a little bit of resistance here, and we're going to be watching to see how that continues to move for Ethereum. A bunch of other coins have done incredibly well, including XRP. Solana's had a breakout as well, which is fantastic. We're going to talk about all of that later on in this video. If you're excited, do me a favor and smash up those likes, and of course double check that you are using some of the best exchanges in the game if you're interested in some of the cool bonuses that they've got. 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪, like I said, we're going to be giving you free chart updates. We're going to be giving you free chart updates from the team, on kind of charts that we're looking at. And Bybit remains by far the best in the game. You can trade traditional finance on Bybit now as well, which is absolutely fantastic. 0% spot trading fees. Super, super cool, crazy offers. Check them out if you're not from a restricted region. But if we keep it locked to Bitcoin just for a minute here, we can take a little bit of a look at what's going on Bitcoin. And, on the hourly time frame and stuff like that, I wasn't really loving it, but we are definitely defending this 17K support level. Obviously, bear in mind that these are the first, kind of times we've ever traded in these price levels before. So everything we're doing here is going to be in the price discovery kind of area for Bitcoin now. And we're doing pretty well, right? I mean, I don't love that we're kind of gravitating towards support a little bit more than resistance. But, bottom line, if we kind of remove this support level here and we just kind of take a look at what's going on the chart, there is some kind of narrowing of the price action, some kind of triangles that you can start drawing here that could potentially indicate a breakout to the upside. It doesn't look amazing, but it's definitely not bad. The bottom line is that we're in a bull market, right? We're in a bull market. We're aggressively kind of setting, I can't say aggressively yet, but we're definitely setting all-time highs, and we're not doing it particularly slowly right now. Bear in mind, every all-time high that we had was always like 1 or 2% higher than the one that came prior, right? But this one, if we measure it, we have now managed to get an entire 9.7% above the previous all-time high, which is absolutely fantastic. I think it's a really strong thing for Bitcoin to have demonstrated here. But even though Bitcoin itself on the super, super short-term time frame perspective is not looking killer, I don't think that it matters that much if the S&P 500 is going up, right? Because ultimately, we've got a very good understanding of this on the YouTube channel now that, when you're seeing these markets move up, the S&P 500, other traditional finance markets, what you're going to be seeing is that the really big money that crypto needs right now in order for crypto to keep going up, that money is now willing to take on a little bit more risk, right? This is naturally why, and it makes complete sense, right? There's so many different angles that we can explore for why this makes sense. I think the most obvious one is that, when you've made money, you feel greedy and you want to make more money, you get a little bit more aggressive. But I think a kind of secondary reason that kind of builds off that is, if you've got a starting portfolio of, let's say, $1 million or $1 billion, and now you're sitting at $1.2 billion, that extra 200 million, you're going to be a hell of a lot more interested in risking that money, than you would have been with your original kind of $1 billion portfolio. Now, I know that not all of us have $1 billion portfolio here, probably not very many, but it's important to think of it that way because that's how capital is going to be allocated, okay? If an account blows, and you would do this with your own account balance, right? If you got 10K and suddenly that 10K turns into 30, you're going to be a hell of a lot more open to kind of risking, that 20K profit or a portion of it and putting it back into the market. So that's why traditional finance health is so important for the markets here, and actually why if on a macro scale, if on a significant scale, traditional finance is not healthy, you're really not going to see much sunshine for crypto. But thankfully, that's not the case right now. We're continuing to move up, which is absolutely fantastic here. Things are still looking very, very good here. And again, if we then bring that back to Bitcoin, yes, we don't quite have that breakout right now, but we're not looking for a one-to-one correlation. What we're looking for is a general kind of, know, like, are we generally just kind of doing what we want to see as far as, you know, kind of moving in the same direction as the S&P 500? And obviously we can take a look at this right here, putting everything on the daily. You're right, Ghost. Putting everything on the daily time frame here. Let's take a cleaner chart and, you know, just kind of map out a little bit of, you know, what we're seeing as far as you know, when the S&P 500 pumps versus when, you know, Bitcoin pumps. And you know, for example, today is a day where the S&P has kind of continued to move up. Over here is a great example. You know, we're getting, you know, quite aggressive moves up for the S&P 500, but Bitcoin kind of actually relatively stable. You know, so this really, you know, sheds a lot of light on the markets for us, telling us how, yeah, sometimes you're getting, you know, very much, you know, pumps happening at the same time, but a lot of the time Bitcoin's kind of slow, and the S&P 500's moving, and then, you know, Bitcoin might move at slightly different times. And I think that stuff is really important to keep. Sometimes there's a complete inverse correlation. Here's Bitcoin moving down with the S&P moving up. But the point is, and I think this is really important, is that these types of inverse correlations, they don't tend to last particularly long for the most part. You know, the S&P 500 strength will be the blessing for Bitcoin. Sometimes Bitcoin is, you know, noticeably weaker than the S&P 500, and that actually leads to bigger drops. But of course, the S&P continued anyway. So I think this is important because it's a general kind of rule that we're still conforming to, and because we're still conforming to it, I'm going to still kind of pay attention to it because I think it could be useful for profits in these markets. But then, yeah, like I said, zooming in a little bit, you know, this 117K level is the level to defend. We've now tested it quite a bit, and I think that if we do keep on testing it, it could turn ugly for Bitcoin. But like I said, we've got that protection from traditional finance right now, and I think that's why, you know, crypto is actually willing to take on a little bit more risk, right? If we take a look at just the last few hours since the S&P 500 did start trading, which I believe was about 4 hours ago, you know, this is continuing to show us that Bitcoin's dominance is moving down. So people are willing to take risk in the altcoin market right now, which is a really good representation of kind of investor appetite in crypto as it stands at this current moment in time. Now, bringing it back to the Bitcoin chart again, just to kind of look a little bit more at what we're seeing here. If we do end up seeing a bigger drop, then obviously, you know, kind of 106, 110, you know, these are going to be some of the levels, 112, these are going to be some of the levels that I think people are watching, probably more just like 110. You know, obviously this was a, you know, a little bit of a zone of resistance for Bitcoin for some time here, and you know, it would be quite nice to see it drop back down. I also think we've seen quite a bit of euphoria, you know, seep back into the market already. Obviously, we were expecting that to happen, but I think it's happened a little bit more than I was hoping for and a little bit faster. But let's take a look at the Fear and Greed Index. And actually, no, it's not actually that bad on the Fear and Greed Index. Of course, this is not you know, like a crystal ball. It's not perfect, but, you know, it definitely does give us some indication through, you know, measurable metrics of, you know, how people are feeling as far as sentiment. So it's not as high as we can get. This definitely indicates more room to go up, you know, but I definitely think that a kind of pullback is going to really shake a lot of people, right? Because I think at this point, the crypto market is just really not okay with the idea of their coins dropping. And I think that could be an issue. A very small point I want to make on the Bitcoin dominance. I'm going to make a full dedicated video on this, so make sure that you are subscribed to get that video. I've already made a massive, like 1 hour long video on this, by the way. You've got to check it out if you haven't done so already. It's a little bit lower down, whereas it's this one right here with the nice orange thumbnail. This video did terribly, but it's one of the best videos ever made. So please check it out. Definitely very, very important, especially if you are a serious investor or a serious trader. This stuff is going to be right up your alley. You're going to want a deep understanding of what's going on, and that's what this video gives you. So we're going to touch on that a little bit in just a second here. But if you are kind of in that category of being serious, and we've got a phenomenal offer for you. It's a 1-to-1 program. It lasts 12 weeks. It's super intense. It is an expensive investment in yourself, but it has been phenomenal for everyone that's come in. Not a single person has failed to pay off their investment fee quickly after joining. Everybody manages to do it quickly. Of course, there's going to be an exception to that eventually, but so far it's gone incredibly well. So reach out using this link here if you think that might be something you're interested in. But, you know, if we do take a look at Bitcoin's dominance really quickly, you know, like I said at the beginning of the video, we are seeing a little bit of a drop here, but I don't necessarily think that this is the beginning of alt season. I think it's definitely, you know, like there's a chance, right? Like, I mean, there's always a chance that it could happen. And I think that right now that chance is significantly higher than it's ever been throughout this market cycle, right? Bear in mind, if you've been watching this channel since, you know, 2022 at least, you're going to know that our analysis on Bitcoin's dominance has been 100% 100% perfect, right? It's been 100% perfect with our Bitcoin dominance analysis. You can go back and watch all the YouTube videos; they're all there, and that means, for me, when I'm coming on the microphone here and I'm saying, hey, it looks like things could actually be shifting now. It looks like we could actually be seeing a bigger drop on Bitcoin dominance now. This is the first time I'm saying it, and I think that that's important, right? Because there's a lot of weight behind these words. The reason that I'm saying this is, first of all, obviously it's a big drop. Second of all, Bitcoin's had a nice blue sky breakout. Third, a lot of the Trump drama, we were expecting a lot of Trump, pumps in these markets. A lot of the drama that's kind of stopped that from happening is now gone. Now, I don't know. There could be, another war in the Middle East or whatever, and there could be, whatever. I mean, tariffs don't seem to have been a problem, which I was predicting quite loudly on this channel, saying that obviously, this hysteria about tariffs is just silly and unfounded. There's only one United States in the world, and other countries are still going to trade with the US, even if it gets more expensive. You're right, mate. So, I think that tariffs didn't turn out to be an issue at all, but, there could be another kind of big thing that everybody starts losing their mind over. And if that does end up happening, then, this could definitely start to kind of, taint the markets a little bit again. But, it does look like a lot of that is over. And so with that happening, I think that there is a lot more potential now for, people to just take on a little bit more risk. Now, to balance this, one of the reasons that I don't actually think, and the core reason that I don't actually think that this is the real alt season yet, is because, usually that alt season is going to happen after Bitcoin does something really impressive. And to me, this is really impressive, right? To me, seeing Bitcoin up here at 123K was the all-time high. That is an incredibly impressive thing for Bitcoin to have pulled off. But it's not face melting, it's very much, I think, price levels that many market participants have been able to kind of expect and look forward to. And by the way, we've got to be reasonable about this, right? Like, this isn't going to go on forever. Obviously, Bitcoin's sitting at right now a $2.3 trillion market cap. So, it's already incredibly large. But so you might definitely have, reason for saying that, well, how much higher can this get in the rankings, right? Like, the biggest company in the world is worth $4.2 trillion, and, Bitcoin's like just over half of that right now. So, it might start becoming unreasonable to expect, Bitcoin to really, double and triple and so on from here. And there's going to be different perspectives on that. I don't really hold a firm opinion on this. I think it's definitely possible that Bitcoin could occupy second place here, given that it's a commodity, it's a currency, depending on how you class it. So, it totally makes sense for me that Bitcoin, with that in mind, could get a lot higher over here. But, you might not feel like that's realistic. You might feel like, companies that have more substance, quote unquote, would be able to, kind of have a higher market cap than Bitcoin, which also, totally makes sense. So, different people are going to have different perspectives on that kind of thing. But I definitely think we've already done something impressive. I just think that, as far as Bitcoin reaching interesting price levels, you really start to see alt season switch on when you reach price levels that have been difficult to comprehend. So 123K, that's still quite local to all of the consolidation we had here and here. And bear in mind, we've been in this price ranges for 7 months. So I think we kind of really warmed up to the, north of 100K kind of price range, especially since kind of mid-May when Bitcoin got that breakout, into this range here. I think we've had a lot of time to kind of warm up to these price levels. So I don't feel like 123 is super surprising yet. But, if we start seeing 140s, 150s, 160s, which, a lot of people are saying is late stage bull market, I don't really hold an opinion on that. I think we could go quite high, during this bull market. I think that there's a little bit more to go, and what this probably means to me is another one of the kind of moves that end up getting recovered, which is great because it means that there's a great opportunity to make some money and then a great opportunity to rotate back into Bitcoin, to kind of ride that strength and then get back into altcoins when they're weaker relative to Bitcoin. I think altcoins for the most part are going to be doing well against the dollar from here on, but and there could definitely be big pullbacks, and I really hope that there are, because those are the pullbacks that have become really, really good trading ranges, and it's not like the coins are going to die anyway, so it's just more opportunities to make money. But I think this really balances things out. Could be wrong, and if I am wrong, I mean, how do you really know ultimately? I think first of all, I think one of the big ones is going to be if we kind of overshoot this 11% drop. Like I said, we're close. We're pretty close. We're at 8% right now, so not too much further to go. And another 3%, drop in dominance would be quite a big deal. Relative terms. I mean, if we talk in absolute terms, the largest drop was 6.7%. and right now we're down by about 5.5. So again, we're super close to some of the bigger damage that Bitcoin dominance has seen throughout this market cycle so far, but I think there's still a couple of reasons to be wary. I think people that are kind of really, really happy with their altcoin gains right now are in a super, super good place. Maybe it's a good time to take. I think it's always a good time to take profit. It really depends. I don't really go by levels in markets. I'm more interested in do you need the money, right? Like, do you want to buy something, or do you want to whatever? And if you're up in the green at that point, then it might be a good time to take some profits. I don't like to be too crazy about it, because the bottom line is, if you kind of start putting a lot of rules or a lot of ifs or a lot of I'll do this when this happens kind of thing for your take profit strategy, a lot of the time those people don't end up taking profits. So I think it's just better to secure what you want in your real life, but obviously that's just me. So that's the kind of downside for Bitcoin. I think that, this 110K range is very, very possible. If we zoom in a little bit now and take a look at, what this is looking like on the shorter term timeframes here, look, we've got a couple of highs up here at about kind of 119. We've got to get above these highs. We're not really doing too well on those highs, but like I said, I think with the blessing of traditional finance, it shouldn't be too difficult. And if Bitcoin can get above this 119, 120K level, then, again, there's no, the only resistance that exists is, basically from 117 to 120. So I think as long as Bitcoin can kind of get above 119, 120, it's probably going to be a pretty quick rally up to 123, and I see no reason for Bitcoin to stop if that does end up happening. But I do think that that's going to result in a little bit of an increase in Bitcoin dominance. I'm not saying that it's going to flip completely and we're going to start setting new highs on Bitcoin dominance just yet, or ever, I don't know, but I definitely think that there's going to be some absorption from Bitcoin, from altcoins going into Bitcoin, just purely because if Bitcoin is moving aggressively, market participants might not want all of that risk in the other altcoins here. So as far as targets, I think 130, 140K that I've been looking at for a while is still very much in play. I'm not really satisfied until I see Bitcoin hit a minimum of 130. I don't even think that we need a big pullback yet, with that in mind. And speaking of that, a couple of indicators that I like to use, obviously the Ichimoku cloud right here, showing us some pretty decent support here. It's already worked. It's already produced a bounce, not a crazy bounce, but a bounce at least, 2.7%. I know it's small, but it's Bitcoin. It's whatever. It's still good. On the daily time frame, I think this is really interesting. Our Ichimoku support is actually down here at 110, right? So if we end up kind of having a slower kind of bleed down, then shit, that's actually going to be really, really good for the market, and that's going to be quite exciting. But as far as EMA support, which I actually really, really like, it hasn't actually caught up to the market yet. So this is going to be indicating that, we can drop down a little bit to capture some of that support, or more likely what I think is going to be important is that, this kind of levels out, and then we kind of touch it and go up, right? And that's if this turns into a longer term consolidation, which I'm not saying is going to happen, but obviously we want to be open to those possibilities as well, so that we're not caught off guard by anything. Ethereum against Bitcoin is doing very well. It's managed to break above its key resistance zone here, and it's punctured its key resistance zone up above as well, which is absolutely fantastic. If it can get a breakout over here, it should be another very quick rise up for Ethereum against BTC here, which again is all the stuff that we were predicting. I put a pretty nice post in the Telegram channel, I don't know, a month or two ago, about how, now is kind of looking like a good time to buy Ethereum. It was a very small dip, and obviously now that's paid off very, very well here. So that's super, super cool. And, in the same way, we've been talking a lot about XRP and how strong XRP is looking. And, XRP has continued to just melt faces with this rally, still looking really, really strong. And most importantly, still respecting this level, right? I think as long as XRP holds this level, and Bitcoin's equivalent is probably, to be honest, it's probably going to be like 116, 117. But it doesn't seem to matter right now, because XRP is also picking up against Bitcoin. So XRP is kind of establishing newer levels, but bear in mind it can also drop quite aggressively, which we've seen a lot of. Bear in mind we're on the daily time frame, and this shit happened only a few months ago, where XRP manages to move up by 34% from open to close, and then immediately retraces most of those gains on the following day. Okay, so really big drops are super possible on XRP. XRP Army doesn't like to acknowledge this because they're retarded, basically, but it is what it is. This is something that can definitely happen for XRP. So if you are holding XRP and you're enjoying these gains, good for you, but please don't think that you're immune from market crashes. This is one of the worst coins when things start crashing, and I think you just need to be prepared to kind of cover yourself if that does end up happening. It's not the end of the world. It's not even a bad thing. Honestly, I think XRP's price action is pretty great. Ultimately, if you're the kind of guy that can get in and then make some profits and get out, or at least, scale out, you might not want to close your position entirely, but if you just kind of, you're happy to scale out, then you're not going to have to worry about this crazy shit. But if you're the kind of guy that says XRP is going to $100 and it's going to, replace legacy banking and all that stuff, which, may or may not be true, the bottom line is you're probably going to have to weather all of those significant drops, and that's not good for your bank balance. That's not good for your mental health. It's just, I think it's smarter to, use these coins as a method to make money rather than as a second wife, which I think a lot of people do in these markets. Some of the meme coins are doing well. Here's Dogecoin, finally starting to make some moves. I don't think it's in a good place yet, but it's definitely getting there. It doesn't really have any real resistance right now, which I think is, a pretty big deal. I don't know why I don't have the price line. Where is it? Right here. Yeah. So, Dogecoin, it doesn't really have much resistance right now. I mean, it could definitely kind of keep going up to some of its next kind of, magnetic zones, obviously like low 30-cent kind of range. Definitely, a level that Dogecoin might like to be at, but obviously, with a little bit of a pullback happening right now in the market as we're recording, that might slow down by a little bit. Same thing for Dogecoin though. If it does end up dropping, it's not as bad as XRP, but it's pretty bad. It could definitely end up seeing a pretty sizable correction down, but hey, I think 22%, whatever. These are pretty standard, swings in crypto. So if you're too sensitive to the point where that upsets you, then, maybe these are not the right markets for you. Maybe you need something a little bit slower and, more predictable, right? But obviously then you're sacrificing some of the gains as well. So it's a double-edged sword there. Obviously different people are going to have different perspectives on this, but I think overall we're looking pretty good. I don't want to go too much into other altcoins right now because I don't think it's super necessary. I will look at Trump because Trump has been pretty dormant for a while and it's finally started to wake up, which is pretty cool. It's got some resistance levels up ahead. I haven't even extended these boxes out, but it's just kind of tagged one of the resistance levels that we've had drawn now for a good few months, and if it's able to get above it, then there is a blue sky breakout here. There is something possible, but we're gonna have to see Trump coin kind of confidently get above $12-13. There's a little kind of final resistance zone here at about $15-16 as well. But really, I think if Trump can get above $13 or $15, that's going to be a really, really big skyrocketing for Trump. And let's just take a look at the rounding bottom patterns, right? Like this is a really nice rounding bottom pattern that Trump did previously, and it's doing it again right now. So, I think that's also a pretty big deal, right? Like it clearly seems like the market does not want Trump to be falling kind of below, $8-7. Something else that I think is really big that I want to point out to you is just the two lows that Trump coin did end up setting. I think this is a really, really big deal. The fact that the initial low was down here at about $7.18, but then the next absolute low is only at $8.30. I think that's so important for the market here because that tells us that we're not really getting kind of deep pullbacks right now, or at least we're not getting pullbacks as deep as people might want. Especially if, there was some double bottom kind of, bids and long orders down here, they didn't end up getting filled. And in fact, we kind of established a little bit of resistance while we were down here. And it was that same resistance which actually allowed Trump to bounce again. If we look at this on a kind of more intimate time frame here, we're going to see that a lot more clearly where, there was, some pretty clear resistance here. And that was just the floor for Trump. Okay. So when that kind of thing happens, that's going to be your indication that, you might not be getting much heavier kind of pullbacks anymore. I mean, you definitely might get them, but I think it also is a signal that, when you start seeing kind of shallow pullbacks, you might want to start capitalizing them on them a little bit more. Again, different kind of risk profiles are going to treat this differently, but, I like to be, a lot more conservative, but obviously one of the things that means is I need to know when I should dial up the risk as well. And, these are the signs that tell me it's time to dial up the risk. Yes, I'm a conservative trader, but within being conservative, I'm going to be leaning a little bit more on the aggressive side of that scale now, simply because, I'm not really expecting double bottoms down here, for example, but if I see Trump coin coming down into this, $10 flat range, that's going to be a pretty tempting buy at this stage, right? So, I think that's going to be something to kind of keep an eye out for as well. But other than that, ladies and gents, I think more of the same right now. We just got to see, which way this thing wants to break. It's testing support a little bit too much. I don't know how much longer it can hold on for, but, the good news is that there's so much support here with indicators like the Ichimoku cloud, which we're nearly touching again right now. Look at this, we're touching it pretty much, right as we speak, and then obviously, you know, the EMAs on the daily, you know, are pretty close as well. So if we do end up collapsing, I mean, what are the chances that we end up getting, you know, a kind of, let's say, supports down here and we kind of deviate down to here and then move back up? I think the chance of something like that happening is extremely high. You know, probably a lot higher than, you know, we would want it to be, you know, but it's also a good thing because it does mean that, you know, if we kind of get a spike down here and, you know, let's say there's a lot of longs over here and they end up getting stopped out, you know, that's going to kind of flush liquidity, and then allow us to kind of, you know, have a real attempt at moving up. I think there's probably, you know, quite a few people, you know, probably going long in this market right now. So perhaps some of them longs need to be punished just according to how these markets are being viewed. And I forgot to show you the XRP BTC chart, but it is now setting another new high against Bitcoin for this market cycle. Of course, worth noting, is it for this market? No, it's not for this market cycle because we've already been higher than this, which I think in and of itself, you know, that's crazy. But it gets so much more crazier when you just kind of look at how this thing is looking across the long term and just understand that, you know, there's so much more room for XRP to kind of gain against Bitcoin right now. You know, and I mean, how long can a resistance level hold for? You know what I mean? Like, this resistance level has been, you know, a problem for XRP going back to July of 2019. So, you know, this is literally pretty much bang on 6 years later now. And, you know, I just don't think that it's going to be able to hold on for longer. You know, like what we're doing right now is more or less the same as kind of what happened over here. And this was 2021. I think this is a really big deal because this was kind of, you know, late stage bull market for XRP where it really started to get high, right? Like May 2021 was when we hit, you know, like 64K, something like that. And then obviously the next all-time high we hit was only slightly higher. You know, I don't think that we're in the late stage of our bull market right now at all. You know, in fact, I think we're still, you know, probably in the first half of it. And so, you know, with that in mind, if I'm right about that, then we're showing a lot of strength really quickly here for XRP, which, you know, I think significantly increases the odds that, you know, this thing could just pop all the way up to that next key level there. And my God, if it does, it's gonna be crazy. Yeah, there's not gonna be any Uber drivers or barbers left if that ends up happening. So we'll just keep an eye on that as well on this YouTube channel. Like I said, you're going to be getting exclusive chart updates from the team right here on 𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗓. It's the same kind of exchange you're used to. You get one-to-one proof of reserves, so you don't have to worry about them pulling an FTX. It could still happen, but you know, obviously I think the demonstration of proof of reserves really helps. Obviously, great liquidity. You get some really nice bonuses when you start trading using this exchange as well. So just check all that stuff out if you're interested. Of course, Bybit, you know, being the best in the game. I don't know why the link's not loading right now, but check out Bybit if you just like the idea of being on, you know, the most kind of robust platform in crypto. Obviously, only if you're not from a restricted region. And those of you that are interested in that, you know, exclusive 12-week program, you can reach out using this link on screen, and a member of the team will get back to you. Ladies and gents, really hope you've enjoyed this video. You know what to do. If you have, smash the likes, double check that you're subscribed to all that good stuff, and we'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.